Hey, what's up, YouTube fans? So the topic for this video, right, is why did humans evolve such large brains that give us such great cognitive abilities where we can do all of the unique things that humans do? You know, we've made internet, we've been to the moon, we drive cars. And so why would humans have evolved such large brains, giving us such great cognitive abilities? Well, for anyone who understands how the process of natural selection works, it should be relatively straightforward to understand how it could be evolutionarily advantageous for creatures to have higher cognitive abilities, because, you know, that could, for pretty obvious reasons, you know, make certain individuals with greater cognitive abilities more likely to successfully produce offspring than other individuals that have less great cognitive abilities, especially back when our ancestors were competing out in the jungle. You know, so there was more selective pressures back then than there are now, right? They were running from predators like lion. You know, if they could have the cognitive abilities to, you know, perhaps you know, make various weapons to defend themselves, or, you know, figure out how to escape or whatever, there's obvious evolutionary advantages. But what isn't as obvious is why would it be though that you know, if it's so evolutionarily advantageous to have high intelligence, why did no other creature, no other species evolve as high of intelligence as us? At least as far as we're aware, no other species evolved as high of intelligence as us, no other species on Earth, that is. Um, and so why is that? Well, the reason why, right, most likely comes down to our ancestors' unique anatomy, which made it particularly useful to have greater cognitive abilities. Because what you're first gonna want to consider, right, is that most animals do not have hands like ours, right? And you know, for something like a dog or a horse or a fish or an insect or an elephant, giraffe, you know, most animals, even if, let's say, if they were like, 1,000 times smarter than humans, they wouldn't necessarily be able to ever progress to the point that we did, right? Even if they were 1,000 times smarter than us, they wouldn't necessarily ever be able to achieve all that we have, right? Because they don't have hands, right? So even if they were far more intelligent than us, or at least equally intelligent to us, they wouldn't necessarily be able to build any complex machines like we have. They wouldn't be able to put their intelligence to as much use, right? There wouldn't really be as much that they could use their intelligence for, right? Whereas for creatures that have hands like ours, right, there's more potential advantage that can come than, one could argue, from having higher cognitive abilities. And the original reason for evolving the hands was not so much that it helped with making tools, but it was instead that it helped with tree climbing, right? Because we are primates. The earliest primates were adapting towards lifestyles where they spent a ton of time in the trees. Most living groups of primates still do spend most of, or at least a large amount of their time in the trees. We're not the only living group of primates that doesn't spend all of their time in the trees. There are some other groups of primates that don't, like some baboons, for example, have gone on to not spend much time in the trees, right? But early primates were spending a lot of time in the trees, so They adapted, they evolved many unique specializations to life in the trees, of which all living primates, including me and you, have inherited, right? But so then the question comes, so why then did no other primate group evolve in the way that we did in terms of evolving larger brains, right? Why did no other primate group evolve in that way? And well, the leading view as to why we evolved in that way, right, is that it had to do with the fact that humans adapted uniquely towards bipedalism, right, moving on 2 feet, right? And the fossil record does indeed indicate that our ancestors had already adapted significantly to bipedalism long before they ever started evolving larger brains, right? So we have Australopithecus creatures showing up in the fossil record, right? And in Australopithecus, we see, bowl-shaped pelvis, long legs, at least compared to a chimp, right? And we see, an S-shaped spine like us, the foramen magnum, the hole through which the spine meets the skull. It had changed its positioning. The feet had arches, and the big toe had become lined with the other toes. In some Australopithecus specimens, or at least the Littlefoot specimen, it was like that. And so our ancestors adapted towards moving around on 2 feet long before they ever evolved the larger brains, right? Because Australopithecus, even though they had adapted towards bipedalism, they still had chimp-like faces, right? And chimp-sized brains, right? Their brains were within the range of chimpanzee size, right? And so our ancestors already were walking around on 2 feet like we do now and adapted towards that long before they ever evolved larger brains, right? And so in any event, why would moving on 2 feet have anything to do with like whether or not our ancestors evolved greater cognitive abilities? Well, so going back to what I said earlier about the hands being important in evolving high intelligence, right? The thing is, even though other primates have hands, other primates aside from humans, other living primates, they all need their hands to help them in moving around. Most of the time they move around, right? So like in the case of our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees and bonobos, their main ways of moving around are knuckle walking and tree climbing, both of which require assistance from their hands, right? And all primates alive today, aside from humans, rely on their hands to help them in moving around, right? And so therefore, their hands are not as much freed up for other purposes, such as making and using tools, right? Now, it is true that, when humans make tools, we're not generally, like, walking around at the same time, right? We don't just, like, walk around while simultaneously building a machine or whatever. But walking on 2 feet could have allowed for our ancestors to collect differing things that they wanted to use to build tools, right? Whereas, and like, so like go around, collect things, carry it back, that would be far more difficult to do, if they could not move bipedally, right? And so one could argue, and I would agree, right, that it would be far more difficult to efficiently do the things that us humans do for a quadrupedal creature, right, like a chimpanzee, right? And so this is thought to most likely be why no other primate group evolved as high of cognitive abilities as humans did, right? Whereas human ancestors did evolve far larger brains. And that's at least the main reason. Of course, there are other factors involved as well. There always are. So, it's not like it's not like that this means that, like, oh, if another primate were to also evolve towards walking on 2 feet, they would without doubt also then go on to evolve larger brains. We can't say that with certainty, right? But this is thought to be the main factor, or at least one of the main factors, as to why humans evolved such large brains with such great cognitive abilities. It makes sense if you think about it, right? Because really, even not taking the brain into consideration, even when we analyze the rest of the body, no other creature on the face of the earth today is as well suited towards doing the types of things that humans do as humans are, right? And so it therefore makes sense then that no other creature, aside from our ancestors, no other creature on Earth would adapt towards, having as large of brains as we, having brains like with as great of cognitive abilities as we have. We don't have the largest brains within the animal kingdom, right? So, I mean, the size of the brain and even the size of the brain relative to the rest of the body size, that in of itself isn't all there is to greater cognitive abilities. It also has to do with, like the organization of the brain. But the human brain is very unique, and this is the main reason behind humans' unique cognitive abilities, where we are capable of doing things no other creature can, building all of these machines that we've created, right? And so, and of course, it's also important to recognize, right, that human success as a civilization getting to where we are now, that did not happen within a single generation or from a single individual. It took thousands of years and billions of individuals to progress to where we are now technologically and as a civilization, right? So when we're analyzing, how did human civilization as it is now come to be, it's not just a matter of evolution, but also a matter of our progression as a culture, right? Once we were intelligent enough to progress in the way that we do, right? That is obviously important as well, right? All right, that's all for now. See you guys.